The Indianapolis Colts versus the Cleveland Browns. I will just hit you with the projections real quick. Phillip Rivers, maybe daily fantasy, but he's not a starter for me. Jonathan Taylor bounces back, gets in the game. Naheem Hines, I don't trust. I know he got some touches yesterday, but I just don't trust him at this point. T.Y. Hilton, I think this is a game that he's going to go crazy. Well, maybe not crazy, but have his best game of the season. Zach Pascal, he's the secondary targeted receiver there. I think he's a start. Keep an eye out for Trey Burton. I'm not going to start him, but Trey Burton, I think, was second on the team in targets last week. I don't like Trey Burton. I know him and I know him well from Philadelphia and Chicago. I'm personally staying away, but you got to pay attention just based on the targets he got yesterday. On the other side, Cleveland, Nick Chubb, we'll see about that knee. The news has not dropped yet for us. I love Dearness Johnson off of waivers if Chubb can't go. Hunt is a play. Odell Beckham, he had a crazy game. I'll say this. I know David and I are going to be on the different sides of this. I know that the inclination with Odell Beckham, if you own him, is to try to sell high now and get something. I will say this. If you're a savvy fantasy football player and somebody's trying to sell high on Odell Beckham, negotiate. I don't mind having him. I'll tell you why in just a bit. Everybody else for Cleveland, including tight end, I am a sit. Take it away, David.
Well, I'm going to start with Cleveland, just because for me, the one name who you mentioned who's probably going to fly under the radar this week is Dearness Johnson.
Yeah.
We got to see what happens with Nick Chubb.
Yep.
But this guy is going to have value if Nick Chubb misses a game. They want to be a two running back offense.
They basically, when Chubb went down, they basically plugged Johnson in for what Nick Chubb was doing and left Kareem Hunt in. And Dearness Johnson closed out the game for Cleveland.
He had more carries than Kareem Hunt. He had this is against Dallas defense, 13 carries, 95 yards. But it just goes to show 13 carries in half of a game. You look at Stefanski. I mean, it doesn't take an expert to tell you this. They want to be a two running back offense. Going back to last year with Dalvin Cook and Madison, starting this year with Chubb and Hunt. And we know Kareem Hunt has got somewhat of a groin injury. He played. He's obviously not seriously injured. But they're going to want to involve Dearness Johnson. They're going to want to get him touches. So they want to be a two running back offense. If Nick Chubb misses time, Dearness Johnson is going to have value. The other takeaway that I have from the Browns, it's the same kind of thing. Stefanski wants to be two running back, and he also wants to be two tight end.
Yeah, Harrison Bryant, right?
Harrison Bryant, and I think you brought him up last week, and I kind of just brushed it off. I didn't really take it seriously. He had 4 receptions for 30 yards in this game again against Dallas, but they only had 4 players who caught more than one pass. Hooper, Bryant, Landry, and Beckham. It's the same kind of thing they had last year in Minnesota where we saw it was Thielen, Diggs, Rudolph, and Smith occasionally. Harrison Bryant, he's not going to have a ton of value. If you're in a 2 tight end league, is he going to be usable? Absolutely.
Yep. Odell Beckham, let me get to this real quick. And, the 3 touchdown game, look, honestly, this is one of the games I watched live as it was happening. It could have honestly been 4 receiving touchdowns very easily. Baker Mayfield missed on a deep throw, and he was interfered with on another deep throw. I know his numbers are inflated from last week, but I've watched every Cleveland Browns game, as I, have caught up on the ones I wasn't able to see live. What you can count on from Cleveland is because their running game is so strong, they take 2 to 3 deep shots to Beckham every single week. And Mayfield, if he was a more efficient quarterback, Beckham would be a clear wide receiver 1. Think about this. If in 2 of the weeks where he fell flat, if he had an extra 50 yards and a touchdown on one of these bombs that they took to him, I've seen him interfered with, with my own eyes. I've seen him interfered with multiple times, not just last week, but in previous games where he was getting behind the receiver. What happens is this power running game that Cleveland's instilling, you get one-on-one matchups. Baker Mayfield, play action, bootleg, takes a shot down the field to Odell Beckham. He will throw when Beckham is double covered. Beckham is single covered quite a bit, and he's being interfered with all the time. I'm actually a guy that, look, I'm not going to give a crazy price on him. People are going to sell high on him. What I would say is, like I said, negotiate for him. Don't give whatever people are trying to do to sell high. If they're trying to sell high, it's because they don't think that they don't believe in him. What I'm seeing and watching these games, they take their deep shots, and Beckham's pretty good. I think 8 to 10 touchdowns is pretty reasonable season long. That's a wide receiver too, at least.
Let me give you the reverse pitch. How about that?
Yep.
Why you should be selling Odell Beckham, right? And I was totally on sell Odell Beckham 2 weeks ago. probably about 2 weeks early after he had 4 for 74 and a touchdown against Cincinnati. I said, sell high on this guy. It was clearly too early. But, I mean, there is still some problems here. You look, again, just looking at the stat sheet. I mean, I saw what I saw on Red Zone. I didn't get to see the whole game. 5 for 81, 2 touchdowns. He had a long rushing touchdown, 2 for 73 and a rushing touchdown. How many times is Odell Beckham going to get into the end zone on long rushing touchdowns, right? One of his receiving touchdowns was a trick play from Jarvis Landry on a reverse pass. This was against Dallas's defense, guys, like who's been a sieve, absolute sieve. He still hasn't gone over 81 receiving yards in any of the 4 games this year. He still hasn't surpassed 5 receptions in any of the 4 games this year. And I am cooling my jets a little bit on the sell Odell Beckham because I do think he's going to have value, especially you look at the schedule coming up. Indianapolis, Pittsburgh the next 2 weeks, not exactly great matchups, but then Cincinnati, Raiders, a bye, Houston, Philly, Jacksonville. But then the end of the season, he's got Tennessee week 13, Baltimore week 14. That's what concerns me, all right? And this is originally why I said to sell Odell Beckham after the Cincinnati game. Because when it comes to week 14 and he's not facing Cincinnati or Dallas and he's facing Baltimore, you're going to get a 3 for 22 line on 10 targets like you got week 1. And it's going to kill your team. And I do think if you have a really good team and you can afford and you think you can get by week 14 with a dud from Odell Beckham, he faces the Giants and the Jets week 15 and 16. So I am cooling off a little bit on that. You have to sell him. But if your team ain't that strong, you need a good wide receiver. You're projecting you're going to need that wide receiver too to perform week 14 to make anything happen. It's a little early to be doing that. You got to keep in mind he's probably going to disappear week 14, the most important week of the first week of the fantasy playoffs.
No arguments there. And, you know, what I said in the book with the Odell Beckham piece is like Stefanski coming in, follow the coordinator. You know what they're going to do. The targets were going to be down for Beckham. I knew that going in. I thought catches were going to be down, but I thought quality of target, you know, the deep shot, one-on-one coverage down the field, I thought those would increase, and that's what I'm seeing so far. So maybe it's confirmation bias, but I like it. I don't disagree with what you said at all about week 14. Hopefully you have a deep team. What I will say is if you're a fantasy football owner, if you're trying to sell high, don't just sell him because you're just trying to get something back from him because he will have value. But, you know, the same is true. Like, don't go out of your way to get him and give up a ton for him either. Just value him appropriately because I don't think last week, look, three touchdowns, that's a little fluky, but, you know, you can expect probably a touchdown every other week. I really believe that. Let me hit you with
I will say one more thing. Let me say one more thing real quick. The pitch for keeping him, too, is at least he's extremely predictable, guys. He's at this point, one of the most predictable fantasy assets in the game. Bad matchup, Baltimore, Washington, under 10 points. Good matchup, Cincinnati, Dallas, over 15 plus fantasy points.
Washington definitely interfered with him on a deep pass, though. But, hey, that's going to happen. They don't show up you don't get points for pass interference, you know.
You know when to play him at the very least.
Yep. Let me hit you with the line here. Indianapolis, -3 versus Cleveland. Who you got?
Cleveland is hot, man. They just destroyed Dallas. And Indianapolis, I mean, they got some issues, man. I mean, they're playing well defensively. That offense is just not there. So I'm going to take Cleveland. You know, that Leonard injury to Indianapolis on defense, that's a big one, especially for a team that can run the ball as efficiently as Cleveland. I'm going to take Indianapolis because what I think will happen is similar to what happened with Baltimore when Cleveland played them. The defense is going to be good enough to not shut down the run, but to neutralize it, which means Baker Mayfield's going to have to really take more of the ownership of this offense. So I believe Rivers will outplay Baker Mayfield this week. So I'll take Indianapolis to cover this spread, but I like what Cleveland's doing, and their defense is underrated. I mean, they played 3 quarters of good football. They just went prevent against Dallas, and you can't go prevent against Dallas. You just can't do that. Dallas came roaring back, but the first 3 quarters, I mean, Cleveland looked like a playoff team. They're good. They're better than what the final score was.